Marcus Richardson stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Scottsdale estate, watching the Arizona sunset paint the desert mountains in shades of amber and rose. At 45 years old, he'd built an empire from nothing, luxury developments that stretched from Phoenix to Portland, each property a testament to his vision and relentless work ethic. The house behind him was a masterpiece of modern architecture. Clean lines, imported marble, and enough glass to make you feel like you were living inside the sky itself. But all that glass couldn't protect him from what had already broken. The accident happened on a Tuesday night 10 months ago. Marcus could still remember every detail with the kind of clarity that trauma burns into your memory. His wife Alina had been driving home from her sister's house with their 3-month-old daughter Sophia secured in the backseat. A drunk driver ran a red light at 70 miles per hour. The impact was so severe that the first responders said Alina died instantly, a small mercy perhaps, though Marcus found no comfort in it. Sophia survived, but at a cost that would reshape their lives forever. The doctors used words like catastrophic spinal injury and permanent paralysis. They explained that Sophia's tiny body had been thrown with such force that her spine had essentially shattered at the thoracic level. Her legs would never move again. She would need round-the-clock care for the rest of her life. When they finally let Marcus hold his daughter in the ICU, her small body was dwarfed by tubes and monitors. She looked so fragile, so impossibly small. As he cradled her, careful not to disturb the medical equipment keeping her alive, something inside him broke in a way that had nothing to do with bones or tissue. It was deeper than that, a fundamental fracture in his understanding of how the world worked, of what could be trusted, of whether anything was truly safe. The months that followed were a descent into chaos that Marcus was entirely unprepared for. His business partner, David, offered to handle the company while Marcus took time off. Friends and family circled with casseroles and condolences, but none of it prepared him for the reality of caring for an infant with severe disabilities while drowning in grief. The sleepless nights were brutal. Sophia cried constantly, her small body unable to communicate what hurt or what she needed. Marcus stumbled through diaper changes and feedings in a fog of exhaustion. Medical appointments filled his calendar, physical therapy evaluations, neurology consultations, equipment fittings. Each appointment was a fresh reminder of everything Sophia would never do, never walk, never run, never dance at her own wedding. Marcus tried to do it all himself at first. He hired a night nurse just to get a few hours of sleep, but even that felt like admitting defeat. He was supposed to be strong enough to handle this. He'd built a multi-million-dollar business from the ground up. Surely he could manage to care for his own daughter. But exhaustion has a way of making you desperate. The first caregiver lasted exactly 3 days. Jennifer was a certified nursing assistant with excellent references. She took one look at the complex medical equipment surrounding Sophia's crib and the mountain of therapy exercises that needed to be done daily and quietly packed her bags on day 3. "I'm sorry, Mr. Richardson," she said, unable to meet his eyes. "This is beyond my scope of practice." The second caregiver, Patricia, made it a week. She was older, more experienced, and Marcus had allowed himself to hope. But on day 7, he came home from a meeting to find her sitting in the kitchen, staring at the wall. "I can't do this," she said simply. "The crying, it never stops, I'm sorry." The third caregiver didn't even bother with an explanation. Marcus came downstairs one morning to find a note on the kitchen counter. "This isn't working out, good luck." Her room was empty, her belongings gone. Each departure drove Marcus deeper into isolation. He stopped accepting dinner invitations from friends. He ignored calls from his mother. Work emails piled up unanswered. The house felt like a mausoleum, beautiful and cold, and filled with the ghost of the family they should have been. By the time Sophia turned 1 year old, Marcus had stopped believing anyone would stay. Why would they? This life was too hard, too sad, too overwhelming. He was barely surviving it himself. And then on a gray Wednesday afternoon in early spring, Isabella Torres walked through his front door and changed everything. Isabella was 29 years old, though something in her dark eyes made her seem both younger and older at the same time. She wore jeans and a simple blue sweater, her black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. There was a calmness about her that struck Marcus immediately, not the forced cheerfulness of someone trying too hard, but a genuine steadiness. "Thank why?" "Oh, for meeting with me, Mr. Richardson," she said, her voice soft but confident. Marcus gestured for her to sit at the kitchen table where he'd conducted a dozen other interviews that all ended the same way. He launched into his prepared speech about Sophia's condition, the equipment, the constant medical needs, the crying. He watched Isabella's face carefully, waiting for the moment her expression would shift, that subtle change he'd learned to recognize that meant she was already planning her exit. But Isabella just listened, nodding occasionally, her hands folded calmly on the table. When Marcus finally ran out of warnings and disclaimers, Isabella asked a single question: "May I meet her?" Something about the simplicity of that request caught Marcus off guard. She didn't ask about salary or hours or days off. She wanted to meet Sophia first. Marcus led her upstairs to the nursery, a room that Elena had decorated in soft yellows and whites before she'd even known if they were having a boy or a girl. The walls were still decorated with the cheerful animal decals Elena had carefully applied, each one a small wound Marcus couldn't bring himself to remove. Sophia was awake in her specialized crib, staring at the mobile above her with the blank expression that had become her default. She rarely cried anymore, rarely made any sound at all. The doctors said it was normal for children who'd experienced severe trauma, a kind of emotional shutdown. Isabella approached the crib slowly, her movements gentle and deliberate. She knelt down so she was at eye level with the baby and said softly, "Hello, beautiful girl. My name is Isabella." What happened next made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. Sophia turned her head toward Isabella's voice. For a long moment, the baby just stared at this stranger with those serious blue eyes. Then slowly, impossibly, the corners of her mouth turned up. It was the first time Marcus had seen his daughter smile in months. "I'd be honored to care for her," Isabella said, still looking at Sophia, "if you'll have me." Marcus hired her on the spot. That night after Isabella had left and Sophia was asleep, Marcus sat alone in the dark living room. For the first time in 10 months, he felt something that wasn't grief or exhaustion or despair. It was small and fragile and dangerous. It was hope. But hope, Marcus had learned, could be the most dangerous thing of all, because hope required trust and trust could destroy you. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Marcus made a decision that would haunt him for months to come. He pulled out his laptop and ordered 6 wireless security cameras from Amazon. They were small, easily hidden, with clear HD video and audio that could be monitored from anywhere via smartphone app. He told himself it was to protect Sophia. After all the caregivers who had abandoned them, how could he be sure Isabella wouldn't do the same? How could he know she was really who she seemed to be? The cameras were just a precaution, just a safety measure, just a way to make sure his daughter was truly safe. But somewhere deep inside, in a place Marcus refused to examine too closely, he knew the truth. The cameras weren't about protecting Sophia, they were about protecting himself from having to trust again. The cameras arrived 2 days later. Monday morning dawned bright and clear. Marcus drove to his office in downtown Scottsdale, but his mind was elsewhere. The cameras were installed, one in the living room disguised as a smoke detector, one in the kitchen tucked behind a cookbook, one in the hallway, one near Sophia's crib hidden inside a decorative picture frame, one in the playroom, and one covering the front entrance. Marcus told himself he'd only check them occasionally, just to make sure everything was okay, just to ease his mind. He opened the app on his phone at 8:47 a.m., exactly 3 minutes after Isabella was scheduled to arrive. The front door opened, and Isabella stepped inside, carrying a tote bag over her shoulder. She hung her jacket on the coat rack, tied her hair back with a practiced motion, and headed straight to the nursery. Marcus leaned closer to his phone screen, his coffee cooling forgotten on his desk. In the nursery, Sophia was beginning to fuss. Isabella didn't hesitate. She moved to the crib with confident, gentle movements, lifted Sophia carefully, and began the morning routine: diaper change, fresh clothes, a bottle, nothing unusual, nothing concerning. But then Isabella did something that made Marcus pause. Instead of putting Sophia back in the crib after feeding her, Isabella carried her to the living room. She pulled out a colorful foam mat from her tote bag, one Marcus had never seen before, and spread it across the floor. Then she laid Sophia on her stomach and got down on the floor beside her, positioning herself so they were eye to eye. "Good morning, sweet girl," Isabella said softly. "Let's do some work together, okay?" Marcus watched as Bella placed a soft toy just beyond Sophia's reach and encouraged her to stretch for it. The movements were careful and purposeful, the kind of thing that required training. This wasn't just childcare, it was physical therapy. Over the next 2 hours, Marcus barely moved from his desk. He watched Isabella work with Sophia, using techniques he recognized from the expensive therapy appointments he'd been taking her to. She massaged Sophia's legs with long, gentle strokes. She helped Sophia practice grasping toys. She talked to her constantly, narrating everything she was doing in a soothing voice. And then Sophia laughed. It was a real laugh, full and delighted, the kind of sound Marcus thought he'd never hear again. The sound came through his phone's tiny speaker, and Marcus felt his chest constrict with an emotion he couldn't name. By the time Marcus's assistant knocked on his door at 11 o'clock to remind him of a meeting, he'd accomplished exactly zero work. He'd just been watching Isabella transform his daughter from a silent, withdrawn infant back into a child who could still experience joy. That evening, Marcus came home to find Sophia asleep in her crib and Isabella cleaning up the playroom. They exchanged pleasantries. Yes, Sophia had a good day. No, she didn't have any trouble with her feeding, and Isabella left with a warm smile. The moment she was gone, Marcus opened his laptop. He told himself he was just curious about Isabella's background. Any responsible employer would do a basic internet search, right? He typed her name into Google, Isabella Torres, Arizona. The results loaded slowly. Marcus scrolled through a LinkedIn profile that had been dormant for years, a Facebook account set to private, and then there. An obituary from 6 years ago. Michael Torres, age 6, beloved son and brother, passed away peacefully after a courageous battle with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. He is survived by his parents, Jorge and Maria Torres, and his sister, Isabella. Marcus's hands stilled on the keyboard. He scrolled further and found a local news article from around the same time. Local teen drops out of nursing school following family tragedy. The article was brief, just a few paragraphs about a promising student named Isabella Torres who had been studying pediatric nursing at Arizona State University. She'd withdrawn in her junior year, shortly after her younger brother's death. Friends described her as devastated and lost. Marcus sat back, his mind racing. Isabella hadn't just taken care of a disabled child before, she'd spent years caring for her dying brother. She knew exactly what it was like to love someone whose body wouldn't cooperate, to watch them struggle, to grieve for futures that would never happen. And she'd come to work for Marcus, to care for Sophia, carrying all that loss with her. Marcus opened the camera app again. It was late, almost midnight. He'd assumed Isabella would be long gone, but movement on the screen caught his eye. The nursery camera showed Isabella sitting in the rocking chair beside Sophia's crib, one hand resting gently on the sleeping baby's chest. Marcus turned up the volume. Isabella was crying, silent tears streaming down her face as she looked at Sophia. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I won't let you down, sweet girl," Isabella said, her voice breaking. "Not like I let Michael down. I should have been able to save him. I should have known more, done more, been more." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "But I promise you, Sophia, I promise I'll take care of you. I'll be here always." Marcus closed the laptop quickly, his heart pounding. He felt like an intruder, like he'd violated something sacred. Isabella's grief wasn't meant for him to see, wasn't meant for anyone to see. He sat in the dark of his office, shame and hope warring in his chest. The woman caring for his daughter wasn't just competent, she was carrying her own unbearable loss and somehow channeling it into love for Sophia. And Marcus was watching her through hidden cameras like she was a suspect in a crime. He should turn them off, he should delete the app, remove the cameras, and start over with honesty. But fear whispered louder than conscience. What if you're wrong about her? What if she leaves like all the others? What if you tell her and she walks away and Sophia loses the only person who's made her happy? Marcus left the cameras running. 3 weeks turned into 6, the cameras captured everything. They captured Isabella arriving every morning at exactly 8 o'clock, always with something new, a textured ball, a musical toy, a book with bright pictures. They captured the hours she spent working with Sophia, never rushing, never impatient, always gentle. They captured the afternoons when Sophia would fall asleep in Isabella's arms on the couch, her small head resting against Isabella's shoulder in complete trust. They captured Isabella singing in Spanish. While she cleaned the kitchen, her voice soft and melodic. They captured her talking to Sophia as if the baby understood every word, discussing everything from the weather to her hopes for Sophia's future. "One day you'll be so strong," Isabella would say, massaging Sophia's legs. "One day you'll show everyone what you're capable of." The cameras captured Isabella eating her lunch alone at the kitchen table, scrolling through photos on her phone, photos Marcus glimpsed only briefly but long enough to see they were of a small boy with dark hair and a bright smile. Michael, he assumed. Her brother who never got to grow up. The cameras captured the woman Marcus was falling in love with, even as he lied to her every single day. Marcus started coming home earlier from work. At first, he told himself it was to check on Sophia to make sure everything was going well, but he knew the truth. He wanted to see Isabella in person, not just through a screen. One Thursday evening, he arrived home to find them both on the living room floor. Isabella had placed colorful cups in a row, and Sophia was reaching for them, her concentration intense. Every time she managed to grasp one, Isabella would cheer with genuine delight. "Look at you, strong girl," Isabella laughed. "You're getting so good at this." When Isabella noticed Marcus standing in the doorway, her face lit up. "Mr. Richardson, you should see what Sophia did today." She held herself up on her forearms for almost 30 seconds. "That's amazing progress." Marcus's throat felt tight. "Thank you," he managed, "for everything you do for her, for us." Isabella's expression softened. "She makes it easy, she's such a fighter." That night after Isabella had gone home, Marcus sat with Sophia in the nursery. The baby was awake, staring up at him with those serious blue eyes that looked so much like Alina's. Sophia babbled suddenly. Marcus froze. "What did you say, sweetheart?" "Isabe," the baby repeated, the syllables clumsy but unmistakable. She was trying to say Isabella's name. Marcus felt emotion crash over him like a wave. His daughter had chosen someone to love. Not just anyone, the woman he'd been watching through hidden cameras for 6 weeks. The woman who cried beside Sophia's crib at night, whispering promises about a brother she couldn't save. The woman who was pouring her broken heart into loving his daughter back to life. And Marcus, God help him, loved her too. But how could he tell her? How could he start a relationship built on surveillance and lies? Every day the cameras stayed hidden was another day of deception, another betrayal of the trust Isabella deserved. Late that night, Marcus opened his laptop one final time. The camera feed showed the empty living room, peaceful and still. His finger hovered over the delete button on the app. Just do it, remove them, tell her everything, start over with honesty. But fear had its claws in him too deep. What if he confessed and she left? What if the truth destroyed the fragile happiness they'd built? What if Sophia lost the only person who had made her smile again? Marcus closed the laptop without deleting anything. The cameras stayed on, the lie kept growing, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice that sounded like Alina whispered that he was making a terrible mistake. Marcus couldn't stop thinking about that phone call. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon, 6 weeks into Isabella's employment. Marcus was reviewing architectural plans in his office when he opened the camera app, a habit that had become as automatic as checking his email. He told himself he just wanted to see how Sophia was doing, but the truth was more complicated. Watching Isabella had become something else entirely. A guilty pleasure, a secret window into a life he desperately wanted to be part of but felt unworthy to enter. The living room camera showed Isabella sitting on the couch while Sophia napped in her arms. Isabella's phone was pressed to her ear, and even through the small speaker, Marcus could hear the tension in her voice. I know, I understand that, Isabella said, her free hand rubbing her forehead in a gesture of stress Marcus had never seen from her before. I'm trying. I'll have it by next week, I promise. I just need a little more time. A pause. Marcus turned up the volume. Please don't do this. I'm working as much as I can. My client, Mr. Richardson, he's paying me well, but I had to use most of my first check to catch up on. Her voice cracked. Please, just give me until the end of the month. Another pause, longer this time. Isabella's shoulders sagged. I understand. Yes, I'll do my best, thank you. She hung up and immediately pressed both hands to her face, her shoulders trembling. Sophia stirred in her sleep, and Isabella instantly composed herself, gently rocking the baby back into peaceful slumber. But when she thought no one was watching, Isabella let the tears fall silently. Marcus closed the app. His mind racing. Who had she been talking to? What payment was she struggling to make? Isabella had never mentioned financial problems. She always arrived put together, always seemed calm and capable, but clearly she was dealing with something serious, something she felt she couldn't share with him. The cameras, which Marcus had told himself were for protection, now felt like something darker. He was gathering intelligence on someone who trusted him, someone who was vulnerable and struggling and deserved privacy, not surveillance. But instead of turning them off, Marcus found himself watching more carefully. Over the next few days, he noticed things he'd missed before. Isabella's clothes, while clean and professional, were the same few outfits rotated throughout the week. She never ate the lunch Marcus had told her to help herself to from the refrigerator. Instead, she brought a small brown bag with a sandwich and an apple, nothing more. Her car, visible through the front entrance camera when she arrived and left, was at least 15 years old with a cracked windshield. The woman who was transforming his daughter's life was barely holding her own life together. Marcus wanted to help. He could write her a check right now, solve whatever financial problem she was facing. But how would he explain that he knew? How could he tell her he'd been eavesdropping on her private phone calls? The lie he'd started had become a cage, trapping him in his own deception. Despite the guilt gnawing at him, Marcus found himself drawing closer to Isabella. Their evening conversations, which had started as brief check-ins about Sophia's day, began to stretch longer. One evening in late April, Marcus arrived home to find Isabella on the floor with Sophia, both of them surrounded by colorful blocks. Sophia was propped up with pillows, concentration intense on her small face as she tried to stack one block on top of another. That's it, sweet girl, Isabella encouraged. You're so close. Sophia's hand trembled as she carefully placed the block. It wobbled, then held. Sophia's face broke into a delighted smile. You did it, Isabella cheered, clapping. You built a tower. Marcus found himself smiling, a real smile that felt foreign on his face. She's never done that before. Isabella looked up, her own face glowing with pride. She's been working up to it all week, haven't you, Sophia? Sophia babbled happily. That's right, I'm Isabella, she responded, as naturally as if Sophia had spoken perfect English. Marcus sat down on the floor beside them, loosening his tie. How did you learn to work with her like this? Isabella's hands stilled for just a moment. My brother, she said softly. Michael, he had muscular dystrophy. I took care of him from the time I was 16 until… She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I'm sorry, Marcus said, and meant it more than he'd meant anything in a long time. Isabella nodded, swallowing hard. I thought when he died that all those years of learning about therapy and adaptive equipment and medical care were wasted, that I'd failed him and it was all for nothing. She looked at Sophia with such tenderness that Marcus felt his chest constrict. But maybe it wasn't for nothing, maybe I learned it all so I could help her. You're doing more than helping her, Marcus said quietly. You're giving her a life worth living, you're showing her she's not defined by what she can't do. Isabella met his eyes and something passed between them. A recognition and understanding, a connection that went deeper than employer and employee. You're a good father, Marcus, she said softly, using his first name for the first time. Sophia is lucky to have you. Marcus wanted to tell her that he didn't feel like a good father, that a good father wouldn't spy on the woman caring for his child, that a good father would be honest, open, trustworthy, but the words stuck in his throat, trapped behind the wall of his deception. Thank you was all he managed. That night after Isabella left, Marcus made a decision. Tomorrow he would tell her about the cameras. He would apologize, remove them, and start over. Whatever the consequences, Isabella deserved the truth. But when tomorrow came, Marcus found himself hesitating, then hesitating again, and again. Each day he told himself he'd confess the next day, and each day fear won. It happened on a Wednesday evening in early May. Marcus came home early, planning to finally tell Isabella everything. He'd rehearsed the words 100 times. I need to be honest with you about something. I've made a terrible mistake, and I hope you can forgive me. But when he walked through the door, he heard Isabella's voice from the kitchen, and once again he found himself frozen in place, listening. I know, Mama, Isabella was saying in Spanish. I'm trying, I just need a little more time. A pause. No, I can't ask him for an advance, he's already been so generous, and I won't take advantage of his situation. His wife just died, Mama. He's grieving and trying to take care of Sophia alone. I can't add my problems to his. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. The shelter is fine, it's clean, it's safe, I'll figure something out, I always do. Shelter, Isabella was living in a shelter. Marcus stepped back, his mind reeling. He quietly set his briefcase down and retreated to his office. With shaking hands, he opened his laptop and typed Isabella Torres Eviction Arizona into Google. The results were sparse, but he found what he was looking for in public records. An eviction filing from 6 weeks ago, right around the time Isabella had started working for him. A notice for unpaid rent dating back months. Marcus sat back, the pieces falling into place. Isabella had been evicted. She was living in a shelter, probably using every penny he paid her to try to find a new apartment while still dealing with debt from caring for her brother, and she hadn't said a word because she didn't want to burden him. The guilt that had been building for weeks crashed over Marcus like a tsunami. Here was a woman who had given everything to his daughter, who had brought joy back into their broken home, and she was sleeping in a shelter because she was too proud or too kind to ask for help. And Marcus knew about it only because he'd been spying on her. He heard Isabella's footsteps approaching and quickly closed the laptop. She appeared in the doorway of his office, her bag over her shoulder. Oh, I didn't realize you were home, she said, surprise flickering across her face. Sophia's asleep, she had a great day, she tried to roll over during tummy time. Isabella, Marcus said, standing. The words were right there, pressing against his teeth. I know about the shelter, I know you're struggling. I've been watching you through cameras and I know everything. But what came out was, would you like to stay for dinner? Isabella blinked, clearly caught off guard. Oh, I don't want to intrude. You wouldn't be intruding, I'm ordering takeout anyway, and I'd appreciate the company. For a moment, Isabella hesitated, then she smiled. Okay, that would be nice. They ate Thai food at the kitchen table while Sophia slept upstairs. The conversation flowed easily. They talked about Sophia's progress, about the beautiful spring weather, about everything except the truths they were both hiding. As Isabella laughed at something Marcus said, her whole face lighting up, he realized he was in deeper than he'd thought. This wasn't just gratitude for someone helping with Sophia. This wasn't just respect for her skills as a caregiver. He was falling in love with her. And she was falling for him too. He could see it in the way she looked at him, in the way she leaned closer when they talked, in the way she touched his hand briefly when she laughed. But it was all built on a foundation of lies. I should go, Isabella said eventually, glancing at the time. It's getting late. Let me drive you, Marcus offered. It's dark. No, Isabella said quickly, then softened her tone. I mean, that's okay, I have my car. She didn't want him to see where she was living. Isabella, Marcus said as she gathered her things, if you ever need anything. I'm fine, she interrupted gently. Really, you already do so much for me. After she left, Marcus stood at the window and watched her old car pull out of the driveway. Then he went straight to his office and opened the camera app one last time. The living room was empty, the kitchen was dark, but on the counter, visible in the dim light from the hallway, was something that made Marcus's stomach drop. Isabella's phone, she'd forgotten it again. Which meant she'd be coming back. Marcus closed the app, but it was too late. 20 minutes later, he heard the key in the lock. Sorry, Isabella called out, I forgot my phone again. It's on the counter, Marcus said, stepping into the hallway. Isabella grabbed it with a sheepish smile. I'd forget my head if it wasn't attached. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. She turned to leave, and her bag caught the edge of the decorative bowl on the counter, the one that had been Alina's, the one Marcus had kept even though it reminded him of everything he'd lost. The bowl tipped, fell shattered on the tile floor. Oh no, Isabella dropped to her knees immediately, gathering the pieces. I'm so sorry, Marcus, I'll replace it, I promise I'll. She stopped. Her hand hovered over something small and black in the wreckage, something that didn't belong, something with a tiny lens that caught the light. Isabella picked it up slowly, her face going pale. She turned it over in her hands, examining it, understanding dawned in her eyes. What is this? She whispered. Marcus felt the world tilt beneath his feet. Isabella. What is this? Her voice was still quiet, but there was something dangerous in it now. I can explain. Isabella stood, the camera clutched in her trembling hand. Without a word, she walked into the living room. Marcus followed, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. Isabella's eyes scanned the room with new awareness. She walked to the bookshelf and pulled down the decorative picture frame, the one that faced the couch where she and Sophia spent so much time. Behind the photo of mountains and sunset was another camera. She made a sound, something between a laugh and a sob. Then she methodically went through the house, finding each one. The kitchen, the hallway, the nursery hidden behind the stuffed elephant on the shelf, positioned perfectly to capture Isabella rocking Sophia to sleep, singing to her, crying beside her crib in the middle of the night. With each discovery, Isabella seemed to fold in on herself, growing smaller and more fragile. How long? She finally asked, her back still to him. 6 weeks, Marcus said, his voice barely audible. Isabella turned around, and the look on her face broke something fundamental in Marcus. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but her expression was beyond hurt. It was betrayal so complete it had no words. 6 weeks, she repeated. You've been watching me for 6 weeks. I was scared, Marcus tried to explain, the words tumbling out desperately. After all the caregivers who left, I didn't know if I could trust. Trust? Isabella's voice cracked. You talk about trust while you watch me through hidden cameras. From upstairs, Sophia began to cry. Isabella moved automatically toward the stairs, then stopped herself. She turned back to Marcus, and he saw the exact moment something broke in her. You watched me cry, she whispered. You watched me talk about Michael, you watched me grieve, you watched me pray over your daughter. Her voice rose. Every single private moments when I thought I was alone, you were there, watching, recording. I was going to tell you, Marcus said desperately. I tried to tell you so many times. When? Isabella demanded. When, Marcus? After 6 months, a year, never. Sophia's cries grew louder, more frantic. I have to, Isabella gestured toward the stairs. Please don't go, Marcus begged. Isabella looked at him with something that might have been pity. I trusted you, she said, her voice breaking completely. I let myself believe that maybe I'd finally found somewhere I belonged, someone who, she couldn't finish. Sophia was screaming now, crying out in that desperate way that meant she needed Isabella specifically. Mama Mime, Sophia wailed. Isabella closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. I can't stay here. Isabella, please. But she was already grabbing her jacket, her bag, moving toward the door. Upstairs, Sophia was crying so hard she was choking on her own sobs. Think about Sophia, Marcus tried one last time. Isabella stopped with her hand on the doorknob. For a long moment, she stood there, her whole body trembling. The sound of Sophia's heartbroken crying filled the house. Then Isabella opened the door and walked out into the night. The door closed softly behind her, and Sophia screamed like her heart was shattering. The first night, Sophia cried for 5 hours straight. Marcus tried everything. He held her, walked with her, sang to her, offered her bottle after bottle. Nothing worked. She kept reaching toward the door, her small face red and swollen with tears, calling out the only name that mattered. Isabella, Isabella. By dawn, they were both exhausted. Sophia had finally cried herself to sleep in Marcus's arms, her small body shuddering with leftover sobs. Marcus sat in the rocking chair in the nursery, looking down at his daughter's tear-stained face and realized what he'd done. He hadn't just lost Isabella, he'd taken away the one person who had made Sophia happy. He destroyed his daughter's chance at healing because he'd been too afraid to trust. By day 3, Sophia had stopped eating. Marcus tried everything, her favorite purees, bottles at different temperatures, feeding her while she slept. She turned her face away from all of it, her small mouth pressed into a stubborn line. He called her pediatrician in a panic. "Mr. Richardson, I need you to listen carefully," Dr. Chen said, her voice grave. "If Sophia doesn't start eating by tomorrow, we'll need to admit her to the hospital. This kind of refusal can become dangerous very quickly in infants." "What do I do?" Marcus asked, hearing the desperation in his own voice. What changed? Was there a disruption in her routine, a change in caregivers? Marcus closed his eyes, her caregiver left. "I see." Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Richardson, infants can form powerful attachments, especially to primary caregivers who have worked with them through trauma. If Sophia bonded deeply with this person, her grief at the separation is real. She's experiencing abandonment trauma on top of everything else. See, she's been through. How do I fix it?" "You need to bring the caregiver back. Or if that's not possible, you need to be patient and consistent and hope that Sophia eventually accepts someone new. But I have to be honest with you, some children never fully recover from this kind of secondary attachment trauma. It can affect their ability to bond and trust for years, sometimes for life." Marcus hung up and stared at his phone. He'd done this. His fear, his inability to trust, his stupid cameras, he'd traumatized his daughter all over again. He tried to hire another caregiver. The first one arrived on day 5, a seasoned pediatric nurse with impeccable credentials. Sophia took one look at her and screamed so hard she couldn't catch her breath. Her face turned purple. The nurse left after 3 hours. "I'm sorry, Mr. Richardson," she said, pale and shaken. "That child needs her mother, the real one, the one she's calling for." Marcus tried again, a different caregiver, someone who specialized in traumatized children. Sophia wouldn't let her come within 5 feet. She curled up in the corner of her crib, hyperventilating, making herself as small as possible. After 2 days, that caregiver left too. "Mr. Richardson, that baby is experiencing severe abandonment trauma. Her attachment figure disappeared, and now she's in fight or flight mode with anyone new. Without professional intervention and the return of her primary caregiver, she's going to shut down completely." By day 7, Sophia had stopped making sounds altogether. She lay in her crib, staring at the ceiling with blank eyes, just like after the accident. She'd retreated to that unreachable place where grief lives, and Marcus couldn't pull her back. His business partner called, concerned about missed meetings and ignored emails. Marcus couldn't bring himself to care. A major development deal collapsed because Marcus forgot to sign the contracts. His mother left increasingly worried voicemails. Marcus stopped going to the office altogether. He sat in Sophia's room, watching his daughter slip further away, and finally understood the full weight of what he destroyed. Late at night, when Sophia was finally asleep from sheer exhaustion, Marcus would open his laptop and watch the old camera footage. He watched Isabella sing to Sophia, he watched her smile, he watched her love his daughter with everything she had, and he'd cry because he'd thrown away the only good thing that had happened to them since Alina died. 2 weeks after Isabella left, Marcus sat on the floor of Sophia's nursery at 3 in the morning. His daughter had finally fallen asleep after hours of crying, her small face swollen and blotchy. She'd lost weight. Her eyes had that hollow look again, the one that said she'd given up. And Marcus finally understood. The cameras hadn't protected Sophia from danger. They'd protected him from vulnerability, from trust, from the risk of loving someone and losing them again. He'd built a fortress around his heart, and in doing so, he'd trapped himself and his daughter inside it. Sophia was paying the price for his fear. He looked at his daughter, this tiny girl who'd already survived so much, and realized she was slipping away again. Not physically this time, but emotionally. She was learning that people you love leave. That trust is something that gets taken away. That hope is dangerous. And if Marcus didn't fix this, if he didn't find Isabella and somehow make this right, Sophia might never recover. She might spend her whole life unable to bond, unable to trust, unable to believe that anyone would stay. Marcus pulled out his phone and called his mother. "Mom," he said when she answered, his voice thick, "I need you to come take Sophia for a few days." "Marcus, what's wrong? It's 3 in the morning." "I have to find Isabella," he said, "and I'm not coming back without her." The next morning, as soon as his mother arrived, Marcus got in his car and drove. He didn't pack a bag, didn't plan what he'd say. He just knew that some things are worth fighting for even when you're the one who broke them. especially when you're the one who broke them. Marcus started at Isabella's last known address, the apartment she'd been evicted from. The building was in a modest neighborhood in Tempe, paint peeling from the exterior walls. A gruff superintendent answered the door. Isabella Torres, the man repeated, scratching his beard. Yeah, she was in Tubi, got evicted about 2 months ago. Do you know where she went? The man shrugged, said something about a shelter, East Mesa maybe, or Tempe, lots of them around here. Marcus's stomach twisted. Isabella had been evicted right before she started working for him, and he'd been paying her well, which meant she'd been using every cent to try to pay off her debts, trying to dig herself out of a hole while living in a shelter. He spent the next 6 hours driving from shelter to shelter in the rain that had started falling. And that afternoon, the first three had never heard of her, the fourth didn't give out information about residents, the fifth said she'd been there briefly but had moved on. By the time Marcus pulled up to the sixth shelter, a converted Baptist church with fading white paint and a tilted cross above the door, it was late afternoon and he was close to giving up hope. A tired-looking woman at the intake desk glanced up as he entered. I'm looking for Isabella Torres, Marcus said. Please, it's important. The woman studied him for a long moment. Room 3C upstairs, but visiting hours end in 20 minutes. Marcus took the stairs 2 at a time. Room 3C was at the end of a narrow hallway that smelled of industrial cleaner and something that might have been dinner. He knocked, and when no one answered, he slowly pushed the door open. The room was large and divided by curtains into 6 sleeping areas, each with a narrow bed and a small locker. 3 women were inside, one reading on her bed, one folding laundry, and one sitting by the window. Isabella. She was thinner than she'd been 2 weeks ago, her face hollow. In her hands, she held something small, a photograph. Even from across the room, Marcus recognized it. The picture of Sophia he'd printed and put on the refrigerator, the one where she was smiling that rare, beautiful smile. Isabella was staring at it, tears falling silently. Isabella, Marcus said softly. She looked up and for a moment, confusion crossed her face, then recognition, then something that looked like fear. No, she whispered, standing abruptly, you can't be here. Please, I need to talk to you. There's nothing to say, Marcus. Sophia needs you. Isabella flinched as if he'd struck her. Don't do that. She stopped eating, Marcus continued, his voice breaking. She cries for hours every night. She won't let anyone else touch her. 3 caregivers have quit. She's shutting down Isabella, just like after the accident. Isabella's hands were shaking, the photograph trembling between her fingers. And Marcus's voice cracked, I need you to. You didn't trust me, Isabella said, her voice barely above a whisper. I know. You watched me grieve, you watched me cry over my brother, you watched every private moment I had and you said nothing. I know, Marcus said again, and I was wrong about everything. Isabella turned away, facing the window. Outside, the rain was coming down harder now. Those cameras weren't about protecting Sophia, Marcus said. They were about protecting me. After Alina died, after watching caregivers walk away from Sophia over and over, I was terrified of trusting someone and losing them, terrified of being vulnerable, terrified of loving again and having it destroyed. He took a step closer, but those cameras didn't show me danger, Isabella. They showed me everything I was too broken to see on my own. Isabella's shoulders were shaking now. They showed me a woman who loved my daughter like she was her own, who brought joy back into a house that had forgotten what happiness sounded like, who worked with Sophia not because it was a job, but because she saw in my daughter a chance to heal herself. Marcus's voice dropped to barely a whisper. They showed me someone I was falling in love with, someone who made me believe we could be a family again. Isabella let out a broken sound. And I destroyed that, Marcus continued. I destroyed us because I couldn't let go of my fear long enough to trust what was right in front of me. Isabella turned around and her face was devastated. Do you know what it's like? She asked, her voice trembling. To think you finally found a home, a place where you belonged, where you mattered, only to realize you were being watched the whole time, that nothing was real, that it was all just surveillance. I know, Marcus said, and I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Then why are you here? Because Sophia chose you, Marcus's voice broke. A 1-year-old baby looked at every person in her life and chose you as her mother, and she's heartbroken without you. Isabella pressed a hand to her mouth, tears streaming faster. And I'm choosing you too, Marcus said. Right now, no cameras, no conditions, no walls, just me standing here asking you to please come home. I'm scared, Isabella whispered. I'm terrified of being hurt again, of letting myself hope and having it ripped away. Then don't let it be ripped away, Marcus said. Come home, let me spend the rest of my life proving that you're not alone anymore, that we're not going anywhere, that you're family. For a long moment, Isabella stood frozen, then slowly she nodded. Okay, she breathed, let's go home. They drove back to Scottsdale as the sun set over the desert, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet. Marcus held Isabella's hand the entire way, afraid that if he let go, she might disappear again. W. When they pulled into the driveway, Marcus's mother was waiting on the front steps with Sophia. The baby looked so small, so fragile, her face still swollen from crying. Isabella stepped out of the car, and for a moment, Sophia didn't react. She just stared as if unable to believe what she was seeing. Then recognition sparked. "Ma," Sophia screamed, her whole body lurching forward in her grandmother's arms. Isabella ran. The moment Sophia was in her arms, the baby clutched her with a desperate strength that shouldn't have been possible. Tiny fists gripped Isabella's shirt. Sophia's face pressed into her neck, and she sobbed deep, wrenching sobs of relief and joy and grief all tangled together. "I'm here, sweet girl," Isabella cried, holding her just as tightly. "I'm here, I'm never leaving again, never, never, never." Marcus's mother wiped her eyes and quietly went inside, giving them privacy. For long minutes, Isabella just held Sophia, rocking her gently while the baby cried. Marcus stood nearby, watching the two people he loved most in the world find their way back to each other. Eventually, Sophia's sobs quieted to hiccups. She pulled back just enough to look at Isabella's face, as if needing to confirm she was really there. Then she touched Isabella's cheek with one small hand. "Isabe," she said softly. "That's right, baby, it's me." Sophia laid her head back down on Isabella's shoulder with a sigh that seemed to come from her very soul. Within minutes, she was asleep, the first peaceful sleep she'd had in 2 weeks. That evening, after Sophia was settled in her crib and Marcus's mother had gone home, Marcus and Isabella sat on the back porch in the cool desert night. The sky was vast and clear, stars scattered like diamonds across black velvet. "I need to show you something," Marcus said. He led Isabella to the garage. Inside was a cardboard box and a hammer. "The cameras," Isabella said, recognizing them immediately. "I want them gone," Marcus said, "and I want you to be the one to destroy them, every single one." Isabella looked at the box, then at Marcus, then back at the box. Slowly, she picked up the hammer. The first camera shattered with a satisfying crack, then the second and the third. With each one, Isabella hit harder, letting out years of pain and betrayal and grief, not just from Marcus's surveillance, but from every time she'd felt watched, judged, found wanting. Marcus joined her, and together they destroyed every camera until nothing remained but fragments. "No more watching," Marcus said, pulling Isabella close. "Only living," Isabella added. "And loving," Marcus finished. They stood there in the garage, surrounded by broken plastic and shattered lies, and kissed for the first time, a kiss that tasted like hope and second chances and truth. The next 3 months were a process of healing. Isabella moved into the guest house on Marcus's property, close enough to be part of their lives but with her own space, her own independence. Marcus made it clear she wasn't just an employee anymore, she was family. He paid off her debts without asking permission, and when she tried to protest, he simply said, "Family helps family." They took things slowly. Some days were hard. Isabella would catch sight of where a camera used to be and feel a flash of hurt. Marcus would wake up in the middle of the night, panic that she'd left, and have to resist the urge to check on her. But they worked through it with honesty, with patience, with time. Sophia blossomed. She started laughing again, babbling constantly, reaching new milestones. With Isabella's dedicated therapy work, her upper body strength improved dramatically. She could sit up on her own now, could grasp and manipulate toys with increasing dexterity. One evening in November, Marcus made dinner while Isabella played with Sophia in the living room. It was such a simple, domestic scene, but it filled Marcus with a contentment he'd thought was lost forever. After they put Sophia to bed, Marcus led Isabella back to the living room, to the exact spot where they destroyed the cameras months before. He knelt down. "Isabella Torres," he said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "You came into our lives when everything was broken. You loved my daughter when she needed it most. You showed me that trust isn't about cameras and surveillance. It's about choosing to be vulnerable, choosing to hope even when you're afraid." He opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring. "Will you marry me? Will you be Sophia's mother and my wife? Will you let us be your family?" Isabella was crying before he finished, but they were happy tears this time. "Yes," she said, pulling him up and kissing him. "Yes, yes, yes." Sophia, somehow still awake, called out from upstairs, "Mama." They both laughed and went at her together. 4 months later, on a perfect spring day, they stood in the garden of Marcus's estate under an arch covered in white roses. Sophia, now almost 2 years old, was the flower girl. She wore a tiny white dress that Isabella had helped pick out, and when the music started, something miraculous happened. With Marcus's mother steadying her, Sophia took 7 steps down the aisle. 7 trembling, determined steps toward Isabella. Everyone cried: the guests, the minister, Marcus, and Isabella themselves. When Sophia's legs gave out, her grandmother scooped her up and carried her the rest of the way. But those 7 steps were everything. In their vows, Marcus promised to always trust, Isabella promised to always stay. Sophia clapped and yelled, Mama Dada, which was close enough. A year later, Isabella opened the Michael Tours Foundation, a therapy center offering free services for children with disabilities. The building was bright and welcoming, filled with adaptive equipment and specially trained staff. Above the entrance, a plaque read, For Michael, who taught me to love, for Sophia, who taught me to hope. On opening day, Sophia cut the ribbon. She was walking now with leg braces, slow but steady, and she took such pride in her role that she refused help from anyone. That evening, Marcus and Isabella stood on their back porch, watching the sunset paint the desert in gold and crimson. Do you ever think about how we started? Isabella asked, leaning into Marcus's embrace. Every day, Marcus admitted. I think about how close I came to losing you, how my fear almost destroyed everything. But it didn't, Isabella said. We made it through. Because you gave me a second chance I didn't deserve. Isabella turned to face him. We all deserve second chances, Marcus. That's what love is, choosing someone every day, even when it